Sydney. New-fashioned buildings, old-fashioned attitudes. In a land of sexual segregation, it's hard to see how men and women get together long enough to procreate, since the only time an Australian husband speaks to an Australian wife is to tell her to pass the tomato sauce. That was my reaction 10 years ago, so on this walkabout, another look at the sex game down under, another chance to be put right, another short stroll through the life and times of Australian lovers. In this man's country, despite awareness arriving with new Australians, television and overseas travel, a woman can still feel an intruder.
Women are not people to the average Australian man. This is the problem. Women are not people.
Frank Hardy, the author.
If you feel like a bit of sex, you've got to have a woman, or you've got to have a wife to mother your children, but women are not people. They don't like intelligent women, for instance. The average Australian are very frightened of intelligent women. And career women in this country have a terrible battle. And, you know, Australian women are now starting to react in a way that's, a few of the young ones are sort of saying, well, look, I'm going to do it the same way. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. But they get into terrible situations because then the men look down on them, you know. Because I don't know, and Australian women have got these terrible bloody voices, you know, they talk so badly. You know, you see a woman well dressed and perhaps a little over made up, but very good simple clothes, and then as soon as she opens her bloody mouth, it's horrifying.
We've been building the swimming pool for about the last 3 years, and you can imagine just how filthy his clothes get, shirts, shorts, just everything.
Would you say then that cold power gets out the worst kind of dirt?
Oh, sure. I've used a lot of different types of soap powders, and I would say I've probably tried them all. But as far as getting things as clean as...
If even television talks to strine, there's always the elocution class.
Dating is fairly simple for most men, but a little more difficult for girls. A lot of the procedure is a hangover from the days when young girls were always accompanied, no matter where they went.
Right, now just let me talk about your voice for a moment. You have a very high-pitched voice. It needs definitely to come down.
But when class is out, the girls return to isolation. For in this eternal sex game, women play under a disadvantage. The Australian social system's not designed to help them meet men. All the usual scenes, beaches, sports, clubs, even dances and parties, seem planned to keep them apart. And certainly they're excluded from the boisterous life within Australia's packed pubs. I mean, where else today do you find women banned from bars? There's still a barrier of sexual awkwardness between beery male mateship inside and outside cool feminine self-sufficiency.
To my way of thinking is that we have only just come out of the realm of chatteldom.
Andrea, broadcaster and Max Sennett bathing beauty at least 50 years ago, a most emphatic lady.
I think that we're for sex. And I'm not saying that women are not for sex. They are for sex. Rather pleasant. But I would very definitely like to say that men have kept us back. People say, oh, the women are so lazy, the women won't do this. They've been spoiled, they buy hats, they buy mink, they do this, and the other. Look at the jewels they've got and all that sort of thing. But the hurdle has been too high.
It seems to me that since there's always been a shortage of women here in Australia, that you...
Shortage? My goodness me. One ram in a paddock would just leave the ewes so excited they'd be fainting, they'd be killing one another. It'd be so silly.
There seems to be not a shortage.
Ah!
Oh.
The shortage if you're talking migrant-wise. Migrant-wise, yes, all these poor things, that I maintain that has a lot to do with some of the crimes. There's sex crimes here, because there's nowhere for a fella to go. And all the very best prostitutes have been taken up by the R&Rs, the boys from Vietnam. It's a lovely, oh, that's a lovely job.
Oh. Well, I had a feeling that that in a pioneer society, which is what Australia's been for perhaps a century.
You were going to say convict society. I feel it coming on.
Never, no. Nothing was further from my thought. A pioneer society, that women ought to be cherished, but in fact you don't seem to have been cherished. You seem to have been pushed back a bit and pushed into the back of the room.
Well then, doesn't the word pioneer tell you that this is what has to happen? If the first people that penetrated into this vast land took his wife and 2 kids, who was it that had to make the home? Mm-hmm. And this is what has happened. And therefore, the man goes mateship-wise. Oh, we're mad about mateship, are we? But it has nothing to do with us women. Women are not mates, they're bitches, you know.
Yes, it's more important that a man should be friendly with his mates, with the men, than he should be in good standing with the women.
He goes home to bed, which is always good, if he does.
Though now on that line, there do seem to be undertones of homosexuality in this.
Oh, the place is roaring with it.
Is it?
Good gracious me, you have to go around with a Geiger counter to find a fella.
The average Australian male hates women in a strange sort of a way. He loves sex and hates women. As people, he hates women. Misogyny is very marked in this country. There's no risk, you're right there.
I think also about, mateship has homosexual undertones.
Well, this has been often discussed, and I would say certainly not. No, that there's no, at the sense of homosexual overtones of an active sex kind, certainly not. It's something else. It's worse. It's something else. It's the fact that the men can extract themselves from the society in which women operate. And in the beginning they had to. There was about 80 men or 100 men for every woman. The men were out on their own in the bush for a year on end. And so they had to become content with pleasures between men of a non-sexual kind in general. Yarning, boozing, gambling. And so they still tend to do this and leave the women aside while they do it. In their main part of their life, the women don't share at all. They don't take their women to the races. They drink in one bar and the women have to go on the lounge. You go around the pubs and you see the women sitting in cars and every half hour the bloke come out and give her a drink. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable to an Englishman, any European.
It isn't human. Surely a man likes to be with a girl, and if she looks nice, don't you?
You don't have to sell it to me. I'm converted already.
Diana Fisher, English but living and writing in Australia.
If you go into the country to a sheep shed ball or something like this, you'll find a row of chairs with all the pretty wives and some with babies sitting there while the chaps are in the other room knocking back the barrel of beer, and away they go, and they don't worry about you. And I won't put up with it. Why should you? Why don't we all sort of mix and mingle together? What's wrong with a dolly? They're married to them. Why do they leave them there?
Well, why has this happened, do you think? How's it come about?
Well, I think they like the image of the great, big, muscular Australian, you know, the surfy, the swimmer, the chap who plays footy, the guy who plays cricket, the man who's in there with the rugger boys, and come the end of the day, he still wants to show his prowess off to the chaps in the bar. How many beers can you drink, mate? Well, great, but the pretty girl, and if she's got any sense, would turn around and say, I'm not putting up with it, but more often not, they do put up with it.
Not only do they put up with it, they go along with it and they acquiesce.
Yes, they do. I think they're a bit stupid on that vein, because why should you? I mean, if you're going to have you see, you have one showing off his prowess now, zipping along the street trying to show his dolly that he's better than everybody. I don't know why. Perhaps it's the life, the sun and the sea and the air, and they think they're bronzed and beautiful and gorgeous, and they should be on a pedestal to be looked at. I think, basically, they need to grow up. They're immersed in sea, sun, and sky and sand, and they forget that there are pretty things lying around for their attention.
How is it that they manage to procreate? This is what baffles me.
Oh, I think they do that very well, but they probably do it and run away and play the next game of footy.
I find a lot of men that I see, even working as labourers, are very suspect to me.
This business of dyeing their hair with,
the Ajax boys.
With Ajax.
Yes. I know. It's quite extraordinary. I don't know why this came about. I believe originally, when the surfy craze first came in, the sun automatically bleaches your hair, and I think they were helping it along so that if you had very blonde hair, they thought, there's a real surf. He's been on for, in the beach for ages and in the salt water and become blonde.
A view of the beach by Mrs. Elsa Jacobi, noted player on Sydney's social charity scene and feminist.
Well, I think we're very second-class citizens. In most countries overseas, a woman is something that a man looks up to and fights for and tries to win if he wants. Even if he wants to take her to bed, he still woos her. But here it's all sort of taken for granted. And I think it's a very extraordinary life. If you live here, you don't know. You take it, it all sort of happens, and you think that this is the way people live. But then when you go away and find out that other people live differently, you get a very great shock and a very rude shock to come back and find that you're pushed aside and you're a very second-class person from then on.
For so long they've been dominant, and the man, he says, right, I'm going out and I'm going to watch the footy and I'll be back at 10 o'clock when the pub closes, and then they get home and they flake out, and next morning I'm out with the boys again, and then he's at work all during the week, and the woman just sort of, for so long she sat back and taken this, and now she's trying to be different, and she's trying to tell the man what to do, and he won't take it.
You just don't stand a chance, because they have a set, if you don't like what they're putting out, well, bad luck,
But the Australian male's terribly manly and terribly, earthy, that's old trash. He hasn't got time for that.
Being earthy and manly, what does that mean?
Well, uncouth and unrefined.
What was that? Uncouth and unrefined.
Well, yeah, really, I suppose, because, you have a suave man, and he'll pull out your chair and he'll open the car door. Well, the Australian male, after he's taken you out twice, you open your own car door.
Yeah, this is...
And I prefer my car door to be opened, whether I've been going out with him twice or for 2 years.
They get married, they have their children, they get their home, they're providers. They're nothing else, they're providers. They can go out work, they can go and finish, after they finish work, they can go to the hotel, drink with their friends. If there's a few little stray ladies around, they can take them out and have a good time. But the wife, if the wife feels like she likes to get dressed and meet her husband, well, she's the worst thing in the world, Coming out, she should stay home. Well, this is ridiculous. That went out in the Dark Ages.
So as soon as they're married, they want to forget.
That's all right, Jess. A place in the home, barefoot and pregnant, that's the attitude. Sad, isn't that sad?
It's sad, but of course it isn't a monopoly of the Australians. I suppose that there is a tendency for married men to, once you've caught the bus, you don't keep jumping off and running after it again.
Don't you play that game with me. I'm not going to come back and argue with you. You asked me what I thought of the Australian male, and I've now told you.
The best-known woman on Australian television, 6 foot tall and no nonsense, the assured Maggie Tabberer.
I recently wrote a series, actually, for one of the Sydney afternoon papers, one of the risky ones, And I wrote all this jag about how the Australian blokes would jazz themselves up and pay attention to their old women and, take them out more often and buy them a bunch of roses on the anniversary.
How they ought to do this.
How they ought to do this, which they don't, it's just not in their makeup. And I had all these guys screaming and yelling at me in the street and sending me rude telegrams and ringing me up and abusing me and saying, we know how to look after our women. At the same time, I had the women ringing back and coming back into the defence of the men, and that intrigued me because I know for a fact that they shouldn't come to their defence because they don't do these things which, to me, should be part of the male-female sort of a make-up deal,
The Australian women do seem very docile about this. They accept it seems.
Well, they accept it, except that if you knock their old man, they'll turn around and tell you how fabulous he is. But he probably bashed them up the night before last, and he sort of knocked $10 off their housekeeping money for the week, and he said, no, they can't have a new dress, But it sort of rather starts so early in life. They see their mothers and their grandmothers accept it, Alan, and then they go along with it. I mean, do you know in this country they still put into their glory box. Girls of 14 and 15, when their birthday comes around, Grandma gives them a pair of embroidered doilies to put in a glory box.
It's a bottom drawer.
A hope chest. Is that what you call it?
Yes, bottom drawer.
They call it a glory box here, glory box. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And forever after, at every birthday and Christmas and everything else, when the young girl should be getting, $10 worth of marvellous crazy makeup or a pair of mad stockings or a pair of knee-high boots or something whizzy that she can love and enjoy and use as a young girl then, she's getting, a rotten old set of saucepans or something to put away in the hope that one of these slobs will come and ask her to marry so she can stay at home and cook in the rotten saucepans forever and ever. Isn't it terrible?
Marching girls stepping out towards a not too promising future. When they come of age, they'll have few legal rights and fewer privileges, and they're not brought up to stamp their pretty feet and insist. There'll be no place for them in politics, they'll be subordinate in commerce, they won't even expect equal pay. Healthy, busy girls, but they do pay for such relentless activity with a certain loss of charm and femininity. They've not even learnt how to twist men around their little fingers. better educated, brighter, more aware than the boys, who always seem to find more time for their mates than the mating game. The Australian girl has an undeveloped sense of mystery, though some of them are just beginning to work at it.
As much of your hair as you think you need to tease. And sort of keep the sections constant, the same, the same amount of hair in each section.
Now, with that beautiful posture, your new hairstyle or your makeup, your new dress is not going to look very special at all, because you have to carry these things with line and with style.
Now, today I'd like you also just to try and look at the girls as you walk down the catwalk. You won't look quite so nervous. Yes, now. Let's pause. Right. Perhaps take 2 steps back, slowly. That's right. Back foot more of an angle always. It gives you much more balance. You don't start trembling. Right, turn. Good. Up to the top. Don't forget your hand actions. Nice. Lovely. You haven't been up, have you?
The Australian husband rarely takes his wife into his confidence. She is, after all, to sleep with, not to talk to.
Turn. Drop the hands just a little.
The wife, condemned to a blinkered world, may have more material comforts than wives elsewhere, but, as D.H. Lawrence noted, she hasn't much style, though few critics would be quite as forthright as Andrea.
You see, I want to tell you something. This is going to make you die laughing. I, every year, am asked to find the 10 best dressed Australian women and the 10 worst. So last year, unfortunately, I said that the 10 worst dressed women in Australia was Mrs. Jacoby.
Intelligence, I think, sometimes is more of a hindrance than a help.
Patty Mostyn, career girl.
They seem to be frightened of anybody that is a little intelligent.
I get the impression that Australian women regard stupidity as the same thing as femininity.
You're quite right. I think, once again, generally they do this. Times over the years, I'd have been, given anything to sort of be able to sit back and be quiet when men say some absolutely ridiculous things, and, be that completely feminine little thing, which, of course, I never have been, never will be, I don't think.
Instead of which you took him by the lapels and you said, that's stupid.
You still poured a glass of beer over his head. Something charming.
some adorable little feminine
gesture. Some little
gesture.
subtlety. This is why I think I enjoy the company of overseas men far more, because, they don't necessarily expect you to be stupid. You don't have to pretend to be stupid. You can talk intelligently and you can still get a piece of the action, as it were.
There doesn't really seem to be very much affection involved in the relationships between the sexes here.
No, there's not in a lot of cases, which I think is awful. And I don't know how the ladies do it. It consumes some energy at the best of times.
And a will.
Yes, and without it being, done sort of just to please the person you're with. The lady's got to get some enjoyment out of it, surely.
That's part of the idea, yeah. Well, now, how has this come about? Why is it like this here?
Why is it that women are prepared to...
They go along with this, as a second-rate sex.
Well, statistics and surveys seem to go to show that there are, far more men than women here. Well, if there are, I'd like to know where they're hiding, because really, any hotel or bar or bistro, whatever you go into, there is a multitude of women, with freshly set hair and, 14 pairs of eyelashes on the upper and lower. And where are the men?
They and the women are going their own ways. The men getting the better of the bargain because they have far more ways to go. The girls are well aware that for a man to run off with someone else's woman is only Australia's second unforgivable sin. The first is to drink another man's beer.
I get the feeling that women are not all that necessary to Australian men. That they have their fun without you.
This is true. You lose most of your men in Australia to their mates. You know, their sport and their mates first. A woman is taken for granted, but then again, alone, they cannot help but make up for this, you see. They are lovers, let's face it. They're a beautiful stamp of a man. They're all tall and they're all sports-minded and, you know, they're exciting. They're hard to get, you know. The continental man is the spoiler. He sort of fusses and gloats over his women, but the Australian man, you're always sort of trying to get him. You're reaching out to him. You're the one that spoils him. And maybe we're pushed down, but then again, we like it this way because we know no other way.
But English migrants like the Bishop of Kalgoorlie and his wife do know other ways.
We find it difficult, being English women, and there are lots of my temperament that have come out here, that after a while you find that your men become, I'm sorry my lord, become Australianized, do you see, quicker, I think, than the woman. And then you find suddenly that for no reason at all you find you're being more or less told, well, this, that and the other. Well, we English are not used to this. So this is something that we have to sort of fight to keep our own identity.
And once you get hold of a girl, you try to hang on to it, you see, but the girl isn't so bothered because there's so many men to go at.
You find yourself getting bored of these girls pretty quick. You know, you think they're all right for a while, and then about, you know, after 3 months, maybe not even that long, you say, I just don't want you anymore. And I've found myself having to say it about 4 times, look, go away, I just don't want you anymore.
And take a party in Australia. This is just a party you go to. You get the group of women over there and a group of men over there, you know. They don't mix like they do back home.
Not if I'm there, I don't.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you're a big guy. You know, but, you know, they split off. You know, it's the same in some of the dances you'll go to. They'll split off, you know, the women with the women and the men with the men, you know. And it's the same with the, you know, elders.
Now, what's the difference in their attitude towards you?
If you want them to go to bed, see, and they don't, you know, want to go to bed, they're used to, like, an Australian would just probably say, go to bed, and they say, yeah, well, I'm going to bed. Whereas an English girl or a Scots girl, you got to, you know, have a bit of manners with them and treat them right.
You've got to romance her.
Yeah, romance them, and they like it.
Yeah,
and when you do it to an Australian girl over here, she's not really sure what's going on. She just, you know, she's just...
There's so many blokes to be had, so you've got to show who's boss, you see, give them a smack in the mouth, and that's it, you're well away.
I really think that the European male does have something magic about how he treats his woman, and I know that in quiet moments, in between, when it gets right down to man and woman times, that's when the European man knows how to treat a woman. I think that's a sad thing that they haven't spread the word and told the Australian how to do it.
But some of the original Australians seem to know how to do it. They'll have a bash at it anyway.